there's a quiet moment right before we begin. Not the moment where we do the thing, but the moment where we know we should. And strangely, that's when the mind becomes incredibly creative. It offers plans, improvements, perfect timing. It says, wait a little longer, prepare more, do it properly. But often, that isn't preparation. It's procrastination wearing a very intelligent disguise. Because the hardest part is rarely continuing. The hardest part is starting. Chapter 1. Why just start is often the real turning point. Just start can sound too simple, like something you'd see on a poster, but it holds a truth that quietly divides many lives into two parts. The years we think about things, and the years we actually do them. The mind loves possibility. It loves someday. Because someday is safe. Someday can't fail. Someday can't be judged. Someday doesn't have to face uncertainty. But dreams don't live in someday. They live in reality, or they slowly fade into a kind of background sadness. From a psychological point of view, this makes sense. Starting means stepping into risk, criticism, mistakes, discomfort, rejection, unpredictability. And your brain, trying to protect you, creates resistance, not because it wants you to suffer, but because it wants you to stay safe. If you don't start, you can't fail. But if you don't start, you also can't grow. This is why just start matters so much. Not because the first step will be brilliant, but because it shifts your identity. You move from, I want to do this someday, to, I'm someone who does this. And that identity shift is powerful. Because once you're in motion, you don't need constant motivation. You begin to build something gentler and more reliable. Momentum. Starting is often the only moment that requires pure courage. Everything after that can be built with habits, small systems, and repetition. So, just start isn't a command. It's an invitation to reduce the task to one tiny movement, small enough that your nervous system doesn't treat it like a threat. Because the secret is this: you don't need a perfect plan to begin. You need a beginning to create a plan. Chapter 2. Why you don't have to be perfect to succeed. Perfectionism often looks like a strength, but under the surface is frequently fear, wearing a neat, professional outfit. But perfectionism comes with a hidden cost. It demands that you already be as good as you'll be after years of practice, and that's impossible. No one writes a great first draft. No one starts a new skill looking like a polished expert. No one begins a meaningful project without awkwardness. If you require perfection before you begin, you're asking for a miracle. You're asking the result to appear before the process. The kindest truth you can learn is this: you don't have to feel ready. You only have to be willing to start while you're still unready. Because success is rarely one perfect performance. It's usually many imperfect attempts that teach you what works. Version 1 teaches you something. Version 2 improves one thing. Version 3 becomes clearer. And one day you look back and realize you didn't become better by waiting. You became better by moving. This is also why just start is so freeing. It takes pressure off the first step. The first step doesn't have to be good. It just has to exist. And if your inner critic shows up and says, but what if I'm not good enough? You can answer softly, of course I'm not good enough yet. That's why I'm starting. Beginners are not failures. Beginners are people doing the most honest thing a human can do. Learning in public, learning in real life, learning without guarantees. So instead of aiming for perfection, aim for something more sustainable. Consistency, curiosity, a willingness to make small mistakes. Because dreams don't require flawless people. They require people who keep returning, even after imperfect starts. Chapter 3. The first step is the hardest, and then it gets lighter. Here's a metaphor I love because it explains the emotional physics of starting. During the Apollo missions, an enormous amount of fuel was needed just to break through Earth's atmosphere, to escape gravity's pull. That first phase required massive energy, almost disproportionately so. And after that, once the spacecraft was out of the atmosphere, The remaining hundreds of thousands of kilometers toward the moon required comparatively less fuel. In other words, the first part wasn't just hard, it was the hardest part by design. Starting a dream is like that, not because you're weak, but because you're trying to leave the gravity of your current life, the gravity of familiar habits, the gravity of comfort, the gravity of maybe later, the gravity of fear disguised as planning. The first step is the moment you push against all of it, and that's why it feels so heavy. Not because the task is impossible, because you're still on the ground. But once you take that first step, something changes. You begin to create momentum. Momentum is softer than motivation. It's the feeling of, I'm already in it. And often continuing becomes easier than stopping, not because it's effortless, but because you've already broken the stillness. So, how do you make the first step easier? 1. The 2-minute start. Don't tell yourself, I'll write a chapter. Tell yourself, I'll open the document and write 2 sentences. 2 minutes doesn't scare the brain, and once you're in motion, you often naturally do more. 2. The ridiculously small step. If your dream feels too big, make your step so small it almost feels silly. 3. Give yourself permission to be bad at first. Sometimes you need a gentle inner contract. I'm allowed to start messy. I'm allowed to make a bad first draft. I'm allowed to be a beginner. Because the goal of the first step isn't quality, it's entry. 4. Reduce friction. Often we don't fail because we lack willpower. We fail because there's too much friction. Put the book where you can see it. Leave the guitar on a stand, not in a case. Create a shortcut to your project on your desktop. Place your running shoes by the door. When the first step costs less energy, you take it more often. 5. Use a calm sentence for the moment of resistance. When fear shows up, don't argue with it. Acknowledge it. Try. Of course this feels hard. It's the first step. I don't have to feel brave to act brave. I'm starting small, and I'm starting now. Fear usually doesn't disappear before you start. It often softens because you start. Maybe your dream isn't too big. Maybe it only feels big because you're still inside gravity. Yes, the first step takes the most fuel. Sometimes it feels unfair how much energy it demands, but like the Apollo mission, the message is quietly hopeful. Once you break through the atmosphere, it gets lighter. Not because you suddenly become perfect, but because you're no longer just someone who dreams. You're someone who moves. So, not perfect, not someday, just start. Subscribe for more reflections on the journey.